Ethan Bell cradled a steaming coffee mug, his gaze fixed on his father, Frank, who was scrutinizing the fresh concrete of their latest skyscraper foundation. "Feel that heat from the city, son?" Frank asked, tapping the solid ground with his boot. "A foundation isn't just steel and concrete, it's trust. People's lives rest on our work." Young Ethan absorbed every word, the weight of his father's lesson sinking deep. That wisdom became a bedrock of his life. 20 years vanished. Ethan now sat in his high-rise office at Con Ed, poring over quarterly reports with the same meticulous focus Frank once gave to blueprints. A framed photo of his smiling parents, taken at his last promotion, sat on his desk. Mark Olson, his colleague, leaned into the doorway. "Hey, Belle, Houston's calling. Triple the salary. You in?" Mark asked. Without looking up from his paperwork, Ethan responded, "Thanks, Mark, but I'm staying put. That's the third offer this year. You're too loyal for your own good, man." "Security's worth more than a bigger paycheck," Ethan replied, his fingers brushing a savings statement marked for his parents' future home. Over 15 years, his savings had grown steadily. Every bonus, every overtime shift, every smart stock pick, building a financial fortress for a dream long nurtured. His parents had poured everything into him. Now it was his turn to repay. His phone buzzed. "Sophia. Hospital gala tonight, blue tie to match my dress." Ethan grinned, remembering their first meeting at last year's gala. Mark had insisted he go. Network outside the energy sector. Instead of business cards, Ethan found himself captivated by a pediatric nurse with gentle eyes and laughter that filled the room. That evening, adjusting his blue tie in the mirror, Sophia's soft hands smoothed his collar. "Looking sharp, Mr. Bell," she teased, her lavender perfume a sweet cloud. "Learned from the best, Mrs. Bell," he replied, kissing her palm. 3 years of marriage had only deepened his admiration for her kindness and fierce dedication to her patients. The gala buzzed with New York's medical elite. Ethan watched Sophia glow, effortlessly engaging with hospital board members and fellow nurses. Her warmth mirrored his mother, Martha. "Ethan, Dr. Harrison, head of pediatrics," a man boomed, clapping Ethan on the back. "Your wife's transformed our night shifts. You've got a real treasure." "That I do," Ethan said, pride swelling as he watched Sophia comfort a worried mother across the room. Later that week, Ethan sat in the cramped kitchen of his parents' old brownstone in Brooklyn. The pipes groaned and Frank's arthritic hands fumbled with the coffee pot. "Mom, Dad, I've been thinking," Ethan began, sliding a folder of apartment brochures across the worn Formica table. "It's time for a place that's easier to manage, better access, modern amenities." "We can't afford that," Frank started, but Ethan gently cut him off. "I can. I've been saving for this since my first paycheck. Let me do this for you." Tears welled in Martha's eyes. "Sweetheart, that's too much." "Nothing's too much for family," Ethan said, his voice steady, echoing Frank's old lessons about strong foundations. The apartment hunt became a family affair. Sophia eagerly researched neighborhoods and layouts, joking about needing good schools for their future kids. She and Martha spent weekends visiting open houses, returning with excited chatter about city views and chef's kitchens. Ethan noticed Sophia taking extra night shifts, but chalked it up to her usual dedication. When she mentioned a new pediatric surgeon, Dr. Damon Sterling, joining her team from Dallas, Ethan nodded, his focus glued to mortgage rates. They found the perfect place on Riverside Drive, a spacious condo with city views, wheelchair accessible, and well within his budget. After years of meticulous planning, during the inspection, Ethan examined every detail, just as Frank had taught him. "Foundation solid," the inspector confirmed, and everything felt perfect. He didn't question Sophia's frequent texts during dinner, or her increasing late-night meetings that pulled her away from family evenings. When she offered to handle the real estate paperwork, "You're swamped with work, honey." He saw it as thoughtfulness, nothing more. As moving day neared, the brownstone filled with boxes, memories packed away as Ethan helped his parents prepare for the next chapter. Sophia missed most of these sessions. "Hospital demands, doctor. Sterling's introducing new protocols," she explained one morning, adjusting her scrubs. "All hands on deck." Ethan nodded, distracted by a contractor's quote for kitchen upgrades. He missed the flicker in her eyes, the tension in her voice when she mentioned Sterling's name. The week before the housewarming, Ethan stayed late at work, tying up loose ends. He'd hired the city's top caterer to ensure the event was perfect for his parents. When he finally returned home, the apartment was dark, Sophia's side of the bed cold. A text blinked on his phone. "Emergency at hospital. Don't wait up." He didn't question it. He didn't drive by New York Presbyterian to check if her car was there. He didn't notice the unfamiliar cologne faintly lingering when she slipped into bed hours later. The solid foundation of his life was starting to crack. But Ethan, always focused on others, remained blind to the fault lines forming beneath him. The morning of the housewarming, caterers swarmed the Riverside Drive condo, transforming it into a scene of urban elegance. Ethan meticulously oversaw every detail, from the hand-selected champagne to the state-of-the-art sound system. "Place the lilies in the Waterford vases," he instructed, gesturing to the crystals Sophia had chosen. Sophia glided through the kitchen, greeting staff with practiced ease, her designer dress whispering against the marble tiles as she adjusted decorations. "Damon confirmed he'll be here," she said casually, avoiding Ethan's eyes. "He's bringing that vintage Merlot you wanted to try." Ethan nodded, engrossed in fine-tuning the sound system. He missed the subtle glance Sophia shared with the catering manager, how tightly she gripped her phone. By 3 p.m., the condo buzzed with guests, all offering congratulations, admiring the stunning space. Martha held court in the living room, proudly showing off the custom cabinetry to her bridge club friends. "Such thoughtful details," Carol Phillips gushed, though her eyes darted uneasily between Ethan and Sophia. "You must be so proud of your children, Frank," Carol beamed, clapping Dr. Damon Sterling on the shoulder as he joined them. "Some kids exceed every expectation," Sterling remarked pointedly, while Ethan, across the room, double-checked the catering schedule. Lucy Davis, a lifelong friend, approached with a tight smile. "The place is breathtaking," she whispered. "You've always been incredibly generous, Ethan. Maybe too generous." Before he could ask what she meant, Frank called everyone into the formal living room. Ethan stood beside Sophia, noticing how she subtly drifted closer to Sterling near the fireplace. "We have an announcement," Frank declared, holding up an envelope containing the condo deed. His hands trembled slightly, but his voice was strong. "Martha and I have been blessed with more love and support than we ever imagined." Ethan smiled, anticipating his father's formal acceptance of the home he had worked so tirelessly to provide. But Frank turned to Sophia and Dr. Sterling. "Which is why we've decided this condo belongs to those who truly deserve it." The room seemed to tilt as Sophia moved forward, her perfectly manicured fingers clutching the deed with an unsettling grace. Sterling's hand landed on her shoulder, a possessive gesture executed with chilling precision. Frank's voice pierced the charged atmosphere, his words striking Ethan like sharp blows to the chest. "These two have shown us the true meaning of loyalty," he declared. "They stood by our side, understanding our needs, when even our own son was too consumed by his career. Martha joined her husband, her voice dripping with condescension. "You've been lost in your work, Ethan, but Sophia and Damon, they understand what it means to nurture a real family." Realization hit Ethan like a wrecking ball, obliterating the fragile facade of his life. They knew. His parents hadn't just stumbled upon Sophia's infidelity, they had conspired in this elaborate deceit. The guests shifted uncomfortably, their unease a silent testament to their awareness. Carol Phillips stared at her shoes, while Lucy Davis mumbled a weak excuse and slipped out. Even Deborah Elliott, his once trusted colleague, faded into the background. Sophia addressed the stunned crowd, her voice oozing false modesty. "We never meant for things to turn out this way," she said, exchanging a knowing look with Sterling. "But love often finds us in the most unexpected places." Ethan's mind raced, flashing back over months of missed signals, skipped date nights, cryptic messages, Sophia's sudden insistence on handling all real estate dealings. The puzzle pieces slammed together with brutal clarity. This wasn't just an affair. It was a calculated betrayal that ran deep. His parents hadn't merely discovered the affair. They had embraced it, becoming active participants in the destruction of his family. The weight of their treachery felt like a series of punches to the gut. Every family gathering had been a stage for observation, every shared secret a weapon poised against him. Surrounded by those he once trusted, something fundamental shifted within Ethan Bell. The sting of betrayal hardened into something colder, a burning resolve that scorched away his former self like acid on fabric. Without a word, he turned and left the condo he had spent 15 years building. But as he drove away, his thoughts weren't clouded by emotion. They moved with razor-sharp clarity, mapping out connections and vulnerabilities with the same meticulous focus he once used to design structural foundations. They thought they knew him, the obedient son, the devoted husband, the reliable provider. They had no idea what he was truly capable of, but they were about to find out. The flickering neon sign of O'Malley's pub cast jagged shadows across Ethan Bell's face as he sat alone in a dim corner booth. The untouched bourbon in front of him was merely a prop for the scene he was about to orchestrate. Jake Riley slid into the seat across from him, his weathered face betraying nothing. They had grown up together in Queens. While Ethan had climbed the corporate ladder, Jake had built a reputation as a private investigator known for his discretion and effectiveness. "Start from the top," Jake said, pulling out a small notebook. "And let's talk numbers." Ethan's voice was steady as he outlined Sophia's recent financial maneuvers. "She drained our joint savings 2 weeks ago, claiming it was for better financial management." Jake's pen scratched across the paper. "Classic asset protection move. How much are we talking?" $400,000, Ethan replied, his grip tightening on the glass. "But that's not my primary concern. I need intel on Damon Sterling's real estate dealings." Jake raised an eyebrow. "The surgeon's been busy. He's acquired multiple properties through shell companies over the past 6 months. That aligns with your wife's sudden interest in real estate." Their conversation paused as Laura Hayes approached the table. The corporate lawyer's tailored suit clashed with the dive bar's gritty atmosphere, but her sharp eyes missed nothing. "I pulled Sophia's employment records," she announced, sliding a folder across the table. "She's been falsifying hours and accessing confidential patient information, specifically data that could sway Sterling's ex-wife's custody case." Ethan absorbed this with dangerous calm. "They're not just stealing from me," he murmured. "They're gathering ammunition against everyone around them." As the night progressed, their network expanded. Maria Sanchez, a forensic accountant who had briefly dated Sterling during his residency, provided a detailed analysis of his financial activities. He's meticulous, she explained, tracing her finger down a spreadsheet. Maintains plausible deniability while exploiting hospital resources. I can show you exactly how he's doing it. Sarah Jenkins, a nurse practitioner, added her perspective. Sophia's been poisoning the well for months. Every time you visited the hospital, she'd spread stories about how controlling or emotionally distant you were. The staff avoided you before they even met you. Ethan listened, each revelation stoking the cold fire of his resolve. The family gatherings, Sophia's late-night shifts, the manipulation of his parents. It was all part of a calculated takeover. Back at his temporary apartment in Midtown, Ethan spread documents across the dining table. Jake's surveillance photos captured Sophia and Sterling in upscale restaurants, their body language intimate and familiar. Text messages detailed their strategy for managing his parents' perceptions, staged photos, fabricated narratives. Sleep became a luxury Ethan couldn't afford. Instead, he constructed intricate timelines, cross-referencing dates and events. Each discovery peeled back new layers of deceit. Sophia hadn't just fallen for another man. She had orchestrated the systematic dismantling of Ethan's entire world. In those sleepless hours, his transformation accelerated. The man who had once valued harmony faded, replaced by someone far more formidable. Years of managing multi-million-dollar energy projects had taught him to identify and exploit vulnerabilities. Now he would apply those skills to a different kind of project. Laura's legal expertise proved indispensable as they refined their strategy. They expect you to react emotionally, the lawyer warned. That's why they engineered the public humiliation. They're counting on you to slip up. They don't know me, Ethan replied, his voice like steel. They never did. By week's end, his temporary apartment had evolved into a command center. Timeline charts adorned one wall, surveillance photos covered another. Jake and Laura made regular visits, fine-tuning strategies and ensuring plausible deniability. Your greatest weapon is their arrogance, Jake observed. They think they've already won. They won't see this coming. Ethan established strict boundaries for his revenge. No physical harm, no collateral damage. But his definition of harm had shifted. The man who once prioritized the comfort of others now recognized that sometimes destruction was necessary for justice. His network strengthened with each passing day. Maria's financial insights dovetailed with Sarah's insider knowledge of hospital operations. Jake's investigative skills complemented Laura's legal strategy. Together, they formed a machine with a single purpose: the total collapse of Sophia and Sterling's carefully crafted world. Remember, Laura advised during a late-night session, revenge is best served cold. We're not after quick wins, we're aiming for complete obliteration. Ethan nodded, studying the intricate web of relationships and vulnerabilities they had mapped out. They mistook kindness for weakness, he muttered. They're about to learn the difference. The first phase of his plan was already in motion. While Sophia and Sterling reveled in their perceived victory, Ethan was setting traps that would turn their own tactics against them. Every piece was placed with surgical precision, every move calculated for maximum impact. They had stolen his dream to provide for his parents. In return, he would strip them of everything they cherished, not through violence or illegality, but with the same meticulous dedication he once reserved for building foundations. The man who emerged from those late-night strategy sessions bore no resemblance to the trusting husband who had spent 15 years saving to buy his parents a condo. The man who had died in that living room on Riverside Drive was no more. In his stead stood a far more intimidating presence, one who understood that real power didn't lie in earning trust, but in mastering the art of betrayal. Ethan reclined in Laura Hayes's sleek downtown office, his eyes drifting across the meticulously arranged folders of shell companies sprawled across the glossy mahogany desk. Laura, the corporate attorney, examined each file with the meticulousness of a predator sizing up its prey. "These are airtight," she pronounced, setting aside the final incorporation document. "They're untraceable back to you, yet completely legitimate on the surface. Sterling won't suspect a thing until it's far too late." "When do we start seizing his assets?" Ethan's response was calm, his tone steady with the quiet confidence of a man who had carefully assessed every risk and ensured the odds were in his favor. "How quickly can we move?" "We can kick off acquisitions tomorrow. I've already got buyers lined up," Laura replied, pulling up an intricate spreadsheet on her laptop. "Take a look at these 3 commercial properties. They're leveraged to the hilt. One solid push, and his whole empire topples." Just then, Jake Riley entered, a hefty file tucked under his arm. "Got something better," he announced. "Maria just sent over Sterling's full billing records. The guy's been draining Medicare for years. The hospital board convenes next week." Ethan mused, his mind rapidly charting new courses. An anonymous tip about billing irregularities could trigger an audit. "I can have Sarah drop a hint with some of the key board members," Jake suggested. "They trust her judgment." The plan unfolded with chilling ease. Within days, whispers of Sterling's questionable billing practices began circulating through the hospital corridors. Sarah Jenkins subtly steered conversations in break rooms, letting just enough slip to spark curiosity. "Have you ever noticed Dr. Sterling's referral habits?" she casually asked Dr. Harrison over lunch. "A lot of patients seem to end up at those specialty clinics he's got investments in." Meanwhile, Ethan maintained his regular visits to his parents, each interaction a masterclass in subtle manipulation. "I just worry about you two," he murmured over coffee, his concern perfectly calibrated. "Those properties Sterling and Sophia are pushing, the market's unpredictable. Other doctors have lost fortunes on similar ventures." His mother's hand trembled slightly as she set her cup down. "But Damon assured us the returns are guaranteed." "Nothing in real estate is ever guaranteed," Ethan replied softly. "Maybe you should have an independent advisor take a look at those contracts." The seed of doubt was planted, and week by week he watched it grow in their expressions. Sophia's divorce papers arrived right on cue. Laura deftly turned her aggressive move into a calculated blunder, binding her with temporary agreements that separated her finances from Sterling while appearing to give her everything she wanted. "Her lawyers fell for it," Laura reported, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. "They were so fixated on your assets, they missed the restrictions we buried in Section 12. How long before she realizes she can't touch Sterling's accounts? By the time it dawns on her, it won't matter. We'll have complete control of his portfolio." Sterling's mounting desperation was evident in his frantic attempts to acquire more properties. Each purchase further stretched his credit, exactly as Ethan had planned. When 3 major deals fell apart due to sudden financing issues, Ethan's shell companies swept in as unexpected saviors. "Need bridge financing?" Ethan's representative offered to Sterling's team. "We can close in 48 hours. The terms seemed attractive at first glance, but hidden in the fine print was a clause that ensured a total takeover once Sterling inevitably defaulted. Jake's network orchestrated a series of minor disruptions across Sterling's properties, plumbing issues, electrical faults. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to trigger insurance claims and irritate tenants. "Funny how unreliable maintenance companies can be," Jake remarked dryly as he reviewed the damage reports, "especially when they're conveniently overbooked." Ethan zeroed in on psychological warfare, leveraging Sarah and Maria's insights to exploit weaknesses within Sterling and Sophia's social circles. Each revelation was timed for maximum impact. At a hospital fundraiser, Ethan casually encountered Sophia, accidentally bumping into the board chairman. His casual remarks about Sterling's custody battles sent shockwaves through the hospital's leadership. Simultaneously, Sophia's social standing began to crumble under the weight of strategically planted rumors. Her country club's membership committee received anonymous tips about financial misconduct. Charity boards unearthed conflicts of interest in her grant distributions. When they retaliated with a restraining order, Ethan was ready. Laura dismantled their case in court, turning the spotlight onto their history of false accusations. "Your Honor," Laura argued, "these claims are part of a well-documented pattern of retaliatory behavior by Mrs. Bell and Dr. Sterling. We've submitted evidence of similar false accusations against others who questioned their business practices." The judge's dismissal was just another victory for Ethan, but his focus remained on the larger goal. Every calculated move brought him closer to dismantling Sterling and Sophia's empire. "They're trapped," Jake warned one evening at O'Malley's. "Desperate people make mistakes, but they can be unpredictable." "Let them try," Ethan replied, his voice steady. "Every step they take will only tighten the noose." His network grew as former associates, sensing the shift in power, quietly returned with offers of support and valuable information. "Should we ease off?" Maria asked during a strategy meeting. "They're already struggling." "No," Ethan answered firmly. "They made their choice when they betrayed everyone who trusted them. They'll see this through to the bitter end." His relentless pursuit wasn't solely about revenge. Every move dismantled the corrupt structure Sterling and Sophia had erected, protecting future victims from falling prey to similar schemes. As spring neared, their defensive maneuvers became increasingly frantic. Ethan watched coldly, satisfied as they exhausted themselves battling shadows while his true offensive struck from unseen angles. The man who once valued harmony above all had transformed into something far more dangerous. A patient predator who knew that true vengeance wasn't just about destroying enemies, but ensuring they never had the chance to rise again. The morning sun had barely begun to touch the New York skyline when Ethan's phone buzzed with an urgent message from Jake. The hospital board had called an emergency meeting. Sophia and Sterling had made their move. Within the hospital's administrative offices, Ethan faced the assembled board members with composed precision. Chief of Staff Dr. Morrison read aloud from a prepared statement. "Mr. Bell, these allegations of harassment and interference are serious. Multiple witnesses claim you've coerced staff into fabricating complaints about Dr. Sterling and Nurse Bell." "Interesting timing," Ethan responded evenly, "just as your audit committee begins scrutinizing Dr. Sterling's billing records." He slid a folder onto the table. "Since we're on the subject of ethical violations, you might want to review these documents. They outline how hospital resources were misused to dig up private information on Dr. Sterling's custody case opponents." The board members exchanged uneasy glances. Dr. Morrison's jaw clenched as he flipped through the evidence. Meanwhile, across town, Maria stormed into Laura's office, breathless and clutching a stack of printouts. "Sterling is liquidating everything through offshore accounts," she reported. "Millions are funneling through shell companies we didn't catch." Laura grabbed her phone. "Jake, we need to block those transfers immediately. Hit every known account." "Already on it," Jake replied. "But they've got backup channels. Someone's advising them." Ethan absorbed the news without a flicker of emotion. "They've picked up a few tricks from us. Now it's time to show them the gap between amateurs and professionals." The momentum of the counteroffensive surged when Sophia's newly appointed attorney, Marlene McCoy, promptly filed a motion to freeze assets under emergency conditions. "Your client has been systematically hiding marital assets," McCoy declared in court, her voice as sharp as the lines of her designer suit, a reflection of her formidable legal prowess. She hinted at evidence suggesting an imminent escape attempt. Laura rose to respond, her expression calm and unflinching. Your Honor, we fully support a comprehensive financial audit of all parties involved, she stated with smooth confidence, including Mrs. Bell's alleged misuse of hospital funds to back Dr. Sterling's real estate ventures. She unveiled documents indicating Sophia had unauthorized access to hospital financial records. McCoy's previously unshakable demeanor wavered as she absorbed the implications. The professional fallout was immediate. Con Ed placed Ethan on administrative leave, pending a full investigation into Sophia's claims. Colleagues began to distance themselves in the hallways. We just need to be cautious until this all blows over, Deborah Elliott whispered apologetically. It's nothing personal, of course. Of course, Ethan responded, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Nothing about this felt personal anymore. Sterling launched his next offensive through the hospital's insurance division, triggering audits of Ethan's past claims. The bureaucratic assault drained resources and endangered his mother's arthritis treatments. They're fighting dirty now, Jake observed during a strategy meeting, dragging your family into this again. Ethan's reaction was immediate. Get Maria on the line. Have her dig up records of similar claim reviews from Sterling's tenure. Let's see how clean his hands are. His network became their strongest asset in this escalating conflict. Maria risked her position to unearth critical documents exposing Sophia's misconduct. Meanwhile, Sarah mobilized nurses to come forward with testimonies about the unethical practices they had witnessed. We're behind you, she reassured Ethan. They picked the wrong people to cross. Jake's financial contacts worked tirelessly to block Sterling's attempts to shift assets, while Laura prepared a compelling counterargument to challenge the asset freeze. Your motion opened Pandora's box, Laura pointed out to McCoy during negotiations. Now everyone's finances are under the microscope. Still eager to proceed? The pressure began to infiltrate Ethan's daily life. He snapped at a waiter over a simple wine order mistake and struggled with insomnia, haunted by relentless visions of courtroom battles. In one particularly bleak moment, his resolve wavered. Jake found him at O'Malley's, staring at an untouched bourbon glass. They're winning, Ethan muttered. Maybe it's time to walk away. Jake grabbed the glass from his hand. Not a chance. You think this is just about you? They've hurt too many people. You're fighting for all of them. The turning point came when they uncovered Sophia and Sterling's critical weak spot. While the duo concentrated on tarnishing Ethan's reputation, they underestimated his deeply rooted connections within New York's professional community. Laura helped him reconnect with former clients, retired executives, and others who remembered his quiet acts of generosity over the years. These allies surfaced at key moments, applying pressure where it hurt most. An anonymous tip about Sterling's fraudulent property dealings emerged from within his own real estate network. The subsequent investigation revealed forged documents and hidden liens, sparking regulatory probes. As summer approached, Sophia and Sterling's resources were stretched to their limits. Sophia's reputation at the hospital crumbled under the weight of growing evidence, while Sterling's real estate empire teetered on the brink of collapse. But Ethan knew that financial ruin alone wasn't enough. The final blow needed to expose their true characters to the world. This ordeal transformed Ethan as well. The cold anger that had initially driven his quest for revenge sharpened into a focused sense of purpose. He realized that true power lay in rebuilding what they had tried to destroy. His network evolved beyond mere allies. They became a force for positive change within New York's professional landscape. They weren't just dismantling Sophia and Sterling's schemes. They were creating safeguards to prevent future exploitation. The endgame was in sight, Ethan meticulously reviewed his strategy, ensuring every detail was in place for the final move. It was time to spring the trap that would guarantee Sophia and Sterling's downfall was irreversible. The New York Medical Society conference room buzzed with anticipation as Ethan approached the podium. His lecture on healthcare ethics had drawn an unusually large audience, with Sophia and Sterling lurking in the back. Today, we're examining how ethical breaches in medical practice follow identifiable patterns, he began, clicking to his first slide. Let's analyze this case study. The screen displayed anonymized data on patient information misuse, billing irregularities, and resource mismanagement. To most attendees, it seemed like a routine academic presentation, but a select few, briefed by Jake's distributed packets, recognized familiar patterns. Observe how these individuals construct networks of enablers, Ethan continued, his voice steady with the authority of lived experience. They exploit trust while systematically dismantling oversight. Sophia shifted uncomfortably as more incriminating details emerged. Sterling's face darkened with the realization of what was unfolding. Simultaneously, Maria and Sarah's meticulously coordinated disclosures rippled through the hospital like controlled detonations. Nurses submitted documented evidence of Sophia's unauthorized access to records, while administrators confronted undeniable proof of Sterling's billing fraud. The board has no alternative but to act, Dr. Morrison declared during an emergency session. These violations necessitate immediate suspension of both licenses pending a full investigation. Laura's team ensured the New York State Medical Board had all the necessary evidence before Sophia and Sterling could formulate a defense. By day's end, their medical careers lay in ruins. The financial collapse followed swiftly. Ethan's shell companies orchestrated a massive sale of Sterling's properties to a covert group of developers. Overnight, millions in equity disappeared into escrow accounts beyond Sterling's control. "You can't do this!" Sterling shouted desperately, trying to halt the transactions. "Those properties are mine." "Check the ownership records," Laura replied coolly. "They haven't belonged to you for months." But Ethan reserved his most personal strike for his family. In the warmth of their Riverside Drive condo kitchen, he played recordings of Sophia and Sterling plotting to manipulate them. "They never loved you," he told Frank and Martha gently. "You were just tools in their scheme." His mother's sobs echoed through the room as she listened to Sophia's calculating words about controlling their perceptions. His father's hands shook as he reviewed financial statements revealing how their accounts had been drained. "We were such fools," Frank whispered. "Can you ever forgive us?" "That depends on what we build from here," Ethan replied honestly. The final public blow came through journalist Carrie Molina's scathing exposé in the New York Times. Her article meticulously detailed Sophia and Sterling's fraudulent activities, supported by whistleblower accounts and irrefutable evidence. "Sources reveal a systematic pattern of exploitation," the piece began, "targeting vulnerable patients and colleagues while amassing a fraudulent real estate empire." The story ignited across New York media. Sophia and Sterling's feeble attempts at damage control only uncovered more damning evidence. Former patients stepped forward with fresh allegations, joining class action lawsuits led by Maria's firm. Their social downfall was equally complete. Charity boards severed ties publicly. Country clubs revoked memberships. Former friends distanced themselves. Attempts to restart their careers in other states met with organized resistance. Ethan's network ensured their tarnished reputations followed them, closing doors before they could even knock. But Ethan's true victory lay in what followed. The organization he established channeled settlement funds towards supporting victims of medical negligence and promoting stricter ethical regulations in the healthcare sector. his parents shifted their focus to educating communities about fraudulent practices. The once tainted condo on Riverside Drive, a symbol of deep betrayal, was restored to its original owners and converted into a center for community restoration. Frank and Martha began facilitating support groups for families grappling with similar violations of trust. Though Ethan emerged from the ordeal profoundly altered, he remained undeterred. The calculating strategist behind Sophia and Sterling's collapse evolved into a more nuanced individual, one who grasped that genuine justice intertwined retribution with rehabilitation. His network of allies stayed strong, their bond fortified by a shared purpose. Together they sought reforms within the flawed systems that had enabled predators like Sophia and Sterling to thrive unchecked. The man who once defined himself through loyalty and sacrifice now found strength in deliberate action and strategic foresight. He learned that compassion should never be mistaken for weakness, and recognized that some betrayals warranted nothing short of complete dismantling of the offenders. Ethan occupied his usual corner booth at O'Malley's pub, meticulously reviewing reports from the New York State Medical Board's latest disciplinary hearings. The data before him was satisfying. Sophia and Sterling's medical licenses had been permanently revoked. Civil lawsuits were advancing steadily, and their assets were being sold off to compensate their victims.
"Got word from my source at New York Presbyterian,"
Jake announced, sliding into the booth beside him. They tried reapplying under new identities. The board rejected them within hours. "Good," Ethan responded, his voice steady with the same iron resolve that had driven his pursuit of justice. "Make sure Boston and Philly are updated," he added. Moments later, Laura arrived, her briefcase brimming with settlement documentation. "The Foundation's first grants are being dispersed next week," Laura shared. 10 victims of medical fraud will receive full compensation, along with additional support for ongoing treatment and the support groups. Ethan asked, ever mindful of the growing network of affected patients. "Sarah is coordinating with 5 hospitals to host sessions," Laura replied. "She's also implemented a rigorous vetting system to detect similar fraudulent schemes." The changes sweeping through the medical community surpassed even Ethan's careful expectations. Hospitals throughout New York rushed to adopt new oversight protocols, many modeled directly on the tactics Ethan had employed to expose Sophia and Sterling. "Mount Sinai reached out again," Jake interjected. "They want you to consult on their internal reviews." "Set it up," Ethan instructed, "but make sure they agree to our terms. Complete transparency, no exceptions." Meanwhile, his parents underwent their own transformation. Frank and Martha Bell devoted themselves to elder advocacy, turning their past shame into a mission to protect others from exploitation. "Your father's seminar had over 300 attendees last week," Maria reported during a strategy session. 3 couples came forward with stories eerily similar to yours. "Send me their information," Ethan directed. "The Foundation can cover their legal fees if necessary." Their efforts began to ripple beyond the healthcare sector. Corporate executives started seeking Ethan's counsel on ethics and accountability. His systematic approach to exposing fraud became a template for rooting out corruption in broader institutions. "Con Ed Board wants to expand your role," Laura noted. "They're establishing a new corporate integrity division and you'll have full control." "Intriguing," Ethan mused. "That could be a platform for wider reforms." His coalition of allies had evolved into a formidable force for systemic change. Jake's investigative skills now served multiple corporate clients, while Maria and Sarah's healthcare consultancy gained national prominence. Even Carrie Molina transformed her exposé into a successful career in medical fraud investigations. We're not just fixing isolated cases anymore, Jake observed during a late-night meeting. We're overhauling entire systems. That was always the objective, Ethan affirmed. Sophia and Sterling were merely the surface symptoms. The real disease was the culture that permitted their actions. Ethan's relentless pursuit now fueled policy reforms and accountability initiatives. Each new regulation, oversight committee, and transparency requirement erected further barriers against future wrongdoers. Some hospital board members think you're being too aggressive, Sarah cautioned. Let them, Ethan shot back. They'll either adapt or be exposed. The Foundation's influence expanded steadily, its resources enriched by the assets seized from Sophia and Sterling's crumbling empire. Under Laura's careful management, the funds were directed where they made the most impact. Another settlement just cleared, Laura announced. $4 million more for the Victim Compensation Fund. Good, Ethan replied, taking satisfaction not in the monetary gain, but in the knowledge that his enemies' resources were now serving their victims. The Foundation's weekly meetings evolved into strategic sessions for identifying and dismantling other fraudulent medical operations. Ethan applied the same precise tactics that had toppled Sophia and Sterling to uncover broader networks of corruption. We flagged 3 more clinics exhibiting similar fraudulent billing patterns, Maria reported. Shall we proceed? Immediately, Ethan commanded. Use the same strategies we used against Sterling. No warnings, no negotiations. His parents watched his transformation with a blend of pride and lingering remorse. Their shift from unsuspecting enablers to fervent advocates had helped heal their relationship, but Ethan never lost sight of the hard truths born from their betrayal. You've built something remarkable, Frank remarked at a Foundation event. We underestimated you. Yes, Ethan responded without hesitation. The condo on Riverside Drive, now the Foundation's headquarters, stood as a symbol of his victory. Once envisioned as his parents' retirement sanctuary, it had been reborn as a beacon of justice and restitution. Another support group kicks off next week, Martha reported. These people need hope. They need justice, Ethan corrected her. Hope without accountability is hollow. His network continued to attract professionals who shared his uncompromising principles. The gatherings at O'Malley's pub transformed into tactical meetings focused on exposing corruption across multiple industries. We're making enemies, Jake warned. Good, Ethan replied. That means we're making progress. The man who once sought harmony now understood that meaningful change demanded confrontation. His quest for vengeance against Sophia and Sterling had revealed the power of calculated destruction as a pathway to rebuilding. Ethan stood before the board of Con Ed, commanding their full attention. The corporate responsibility framework he proposed promised to revolutionize the company's ethical standards. These reforms aren't optional, he stated firmly. We either implement complete accountability, or I walk. The board chairman shifted uneasily. Some of these requirements seem excessive. Extraordinary problems call for extraordinary solutions, Ethan countered. If full transparency makes you uncomfortable, you should question why. His reputation for unwavering integrity extended beyond New York. Companies nationwide sought his guidance, though many balked at the strict conditions he demanded. Another consulting offer from Chicago, Laura reported during a morning briefing. A healthcare consortium aiming to preempt fraud investigations. Send them our standard terms, Ethan instructed. No exceptions, no compromises. What began as therapy for managing stress had evolved into a profound exploration of power dynamics. Dr. Chen, a therapist, became an unexpected confidant, aiding him in refining his methods. "You've transformed personal pain into systemic reform," she observed during one session. "But be careful. Don't let the mission consume you." Ethan no longer recognized the man he once was. "The mission defines me now," he replied coolly. The person who had walked into that condo on Riverside Drive had died there, leaving behind someone who wielded power in subtler, more profound ways. Instead of dominating through aggression, he fostered alliances rooted in common goals and shared accountability. "The hospital board is pushing back against the new regulations," Sarah informed him during their weekly briefing. "Leak the audit details to Carrie," Ethan ordered without hesitation. "Let the public do the heavy lifting." The pristine image he once carefully curated had given way to a raw, deliberate honesty. Public speeches attracted large crowds, captivated by his unfiltered accounts of betrayal and institutional collapse. "People connect with your story," Jake remarked after another Pact event. "It helps them confront their own battles." "They're reacting to results," Ethan corrected. "A story without consequences is just a tale." His personal connections evolved as well. The allies he'd gathered during his pursuit of vengeance had transformed into genuine relationships, bound by trust and common purpose. "The Mount Sinai team is arriving next week," Maria announced. "Are we set to put them through the standard protocols?" Ethan asked. "Make them earn our trust. Start with the audit procedures." Watching Sophia and Sterling's downfall no longer gave him the same thrill. The true satisfaction came from the larger mission's ripple effects. Any attempts they made to rebuild their careers in other states were swiftly thwarted. "They tried securing positions at a Florida clinic," Jake reported. "Anonymous tips shut that down within hours." "Make sure they understand why," Ethan instructed. "This isn't about revenge anymore. It's about prevention." Through his foundation's efforts, deep-rooted patterns of exploitation in the healthcare sector were exposed. Each new investigation built upon lessons from dismantling Sophia and Sterling's schemes. 3 more whistleblowers came forward this week, Laura revealed in a strategy session. Similar fraudulent activities at other institutions. "Start compiling cases," Ethan directed. "Apply the same techniques we've used before. No leniency for those who enable this." His morning runs through Central Park had become less about fitness and more about strategy. Every route took him past landmarks, the hospital, seized properties, and the very condo where his transformation began. His daily routine reflected his shifting priorities. Between overseeing the foundation and consulting for corporations, he found time to mentor upcoming leaders. Every action fed into his larger goal of systemic reform. "You've built something unprecedented," Laura commented during a late-night dinner. "A framework to expose and prevent institutional abuse." "This is just the beginning," Ethan responded. "Healthcare corruption is just a symptom. The real disease runs deeper." His strategic prowess blended effortlessly with emotional insight gained through experience. He learned that real change demanded both an understanding of human behavior and a keen eye for systemic flaws. "The new oversight committee is nervous about the rollout," Sarah reported. "Good," Ethan nodded. "Nervous people are less prone to mistakes. Complacency breeds carelessness." The ruthlessness that once fueled his quest for vengeance now served a higher purpose, ensuring accountability and enforcing policies. His reputation for uncompromising standards drew like-minded individuals eager for systemic reform. "Another hospital group is requesting a consultation," Jake announced. "They've already agreed to our transparency terms." "Schedule the preliminary audit," Ethan replied. "Let's see if they're serious." The man who once craved approval now understood the value of strategic self-interest. His well-being had become essential to the mission's longevity. A new phase had begun. A year after the fateful housewarming party that shattered his life, Ethan was overseeing final preparations for the Foundation's public debut. The refurbished condo on Riverside Drive buzzed with purpose. "Here's the latest on victim impact," Maria said, placing a thick file on his desk. 23 cases resolved, full compensation secured. "Excellent. How's the new support group framework coming along?" "Sarah's coordinating with 5 hospitals. The screening protocols you developed are revealing fraud patterns we hadn't anticipated." The transformation extended beyond isolated incidents. Hospitals across New York were striving to meet the Foundation's rigorous accountability standards. Mount Sinai's board approved the full oversight package, Laura reported. "They're implementing all our recommended protocols, including whistleblower protections." "Confirmed," Ethan affirmed. "Absolutely. They've learned from what happened here." Even his parents found unexpected fulfillment in their new roles. Frank's workshops on identifying manipulation attracted growing audiences, while Martha's support groups offered crucial spaces for fraud victims to heal. "Another couple shared their story today," Frank mentioned during their weekly dinner. "Their experience mirrored ours almost exactly." "The patterns stay the same," Ethan noted. "It's our response that evolves." The alliances he forged became a model for collaborative justice. Jake's investigative firm specialized in exposing healthcare fraud, while Maria and Sarah's consultancy helped institutions prevent similar schemes. "We flagged potential issues at 3 more clinics," Jake reported in the morning briefing. "Start building cases immediately. Follow the protocols. No warnings, no negotiations." Carrie Molina's ongoing exposés on medical fraud had drawn national attention to the systemic issues. Her latest article showcased the Foundation's success in driving industry-wide reforms. "The publicity is making some people uncomfortable," Laura observed. "Let them squirm," Ethan replied. "Nervous people make better choices." His influence had expanded beyond healthcare, touching corporate ethics on a broader scale. Companies sought his guidance for implementing accountability measures, only to encounter his rigid standards. "We've got a consulting request from Chicago," Maria noted. "They're offering triple our usual fee." "Send them our standard terms," Ethan instructed. "The fee isn't negotiable. Our principles are." Weekly strategy sessions at O'Malley's pub had evolved into detailed planning meetings aimed at expanding their reach. Each member of his network brought unique skills to the shared mission. "We're not just fixing isolated cases anymore," Jake observed. "We're transforming entire systems." "That was always the goal," Ethan affirmed. "Individual predators are just symptoms. The real enemy is the culture that enables them." His vision of justice had shifted from personal vengeance to comprehensive reform. Every new policy, oversight committee, and transparency mandate became another safeguard against future wrongdoers. "Some board members think we're pushing too hard," Sarah reported. "They can adapt or be exposed," Ethan said firmly. "There's no middle ground." The Foundation's resources continued to grow, bolstered by assets reclaimed from the corruption they uncovered. Laura's careful management ensured every dollar made a meaningful impact. "The latest settlement cleared," Laura announced. "Another $6 million allocated for victim compensation." "Good. Direct it towards expanding our programs." The satisfaction of seeing Sophia and Sterling's careers crumble paled in comparison to preventing new predators from emerging. Their attempts to restart their lives were blocked at every turn. "They tried applying at a California clinic," Jake reported. "Anonymous tips shut that down immediately." "Make sure they understand why," Ethan instructed. "This isn't about them anymore. It's about protecting others and building a better future." Ethan saw limitless potential to extend his reach. Each victory unlocked new assets and knowledge, propelling him toward the next challenge. "We're starting to attract some serious opposition," Laura warned during a late-night strategy session.
"Good,"
Ethan replied with a smile.
"That means we're on the right path."
No longer defined by the scars of betrayal, Ethan had become a force of systemic transformation. His personal anguish had been redirected into a mission to reform institutions rather than simply tearing down those who had wronged him. His true legacy would be the safeguards he built to protect others from similar betrayals. The condo on Riverside Drive, once a painful symbol of lost trust, now stood as a monument to justice forged from treachery. 10 years later, the Bell Foundation's headquarters rose above New York's medical district, its gleaming glass facade reflecting the city skyline. From his office on the top floor, Ethan Bell reviewed quarterly reports detailing the Foundation's expanding influence across North America. At 55, streaks of gray threaded through his hair, but his eyes remained sharp and focused. Maria Sanchez, now the Foundation's indispensable chief financial officer and a trusted confidant, entered with a thick folder in hand. "Here are the latest numbers from the Fraud Prevention Unit," she announced. "This year alone, we have stopped nearly $4 billion worth of healthcare fraud."
"Break it down by region,"
Ethan instructed, his voice carrying the same authoritative edge that had once orchestrated Sophia and Sterling's downfall. "I want to know where to direct our focus next." What began as a mission of vengeance had grown into something far larger. With offices in a dozen major cities and over 400 staff members, the Foundation had become the nation's leading authority on healthcare fraud prevention and patient advocacy. The condo on Riverside Drive, once the scene of his betrayal, had been repurposed as a museum and training center for healthcare professionals, emphasizing ethics and accountability. Jake Riley arrived, tablet in hand. His private investigation firm had evolved into a specialized agency solely dedicated to combating healthcare fraud.
"I have an update on some old acquaintances,"
he said, settling into a chair.
"Sophia tried to get a nursing license in Canada under a fake name. The system flagged her immediately." "And Sterling?"
Ethan asked, his tone devoid of emotion.
"Still in Arizona, barely making ends meet as a medical equipment sales rep. His last attempt to practice medicine was in Mexico 5 years ago. Our contacts shut it down within days."
Over the years, Sophia and Sterling had become cautionary tales in medical ethics courses. Their attempts to rebuild their lives were consistently thwarted, not by direct interference, but by the very systems Ethan had meticulously put in place. Laura Hayes, now managing partner at a prestigious law firm with a division specializing in medical fraud, joined via video call. "The Johnson-Riley bill just passed the Senate," she announced. "Once it's signed into law, our oversight protocols will be mandatory in all federally funded healthcare facilities." This legislative win was the culmination of years of strategic lobbying and relationship building. Ethan had turned his thirst for revenge into a larger mission for institutional reform.
"What's the update on our international expansion?"
Ethan asked. The Foundation was preparing to open offices in London and Singapore. "Contracts are ready for your review," Laura confirmed. "Local partners have already committed to our transparency standards." Sarah Jenkins, who had built the patient advocacy division into a powerful force for healthcare reform, arrived with new updates. 5 more hospital groups have adopted our full compliance program, she reported. "We now cover 90% of major medical centers nationwide." Despite the Foundation's rapid growth, their weekly strategy meetings were still held in a private room at O'Malley's pub, a nod to their modest beginnings. The focus remained sharp, but the scope had expanded dramatically.
"What's the latest on the training program?"
Ethan asked. "We have 300 healthcare administrators enrolled in the first session."
Sarah replied. We're using real case studies from our database to teach fraud detection techniques. The Foundation's database had grown to include thousands of meticulously documented cases. Sophia and Sterling's story was now just one among many, though it remained required reading for new hires. Carrie Molina, whose exposé had been pivotal in exposing Sophia and Sterling, had built a successful career specializing in healthcare corruption. Her latest book, Breaking the Code of Silence, Healthcare Fraud in America, dedicated an entire chapter to the Foundation's origins and accomplishments. The national press wants another interview series, Jake mentioned. They're planning a 15-year retrospective on the Foundation's impact. Send them to PR, Ethan instructed. But make sure they understand this isn't about individuals, it's about results. Ethan's parents, Frank and Martha Bell, had found new purpose through the Foundation's elder advocacy programs. Frank's workshops on identifying manipulation and healthcare decisions attracted thousands of online participants. Your father's latest seminar had over 10,000 virtual attendees, Maria noted. His prevention strategies are now part of standard training materials. Seeing his parents transform from unwitting accomplices to influential advocates was one of Ethan's most satisfying achievements. Their relationship had been rebuilt on mutual purpose rather than blind trust. Mom called earlier, Ethan mentioned. They're expanding the support network into Canada. Beyond healthcare oversight, the Foundation's influence had spread into corporate governance. Business leaders sought their expertise to implement ethical frameworks and accountability systems. Morgan Stanley's board has approved our full compliance package, Laura announced. They'll implement it across their healthcare investment division. Good, Ethan nodded. Send them the standard monitoring protocols. The Foundation's success had attracted both allies and opponents. Industry leaders resistant to reform often found themselves ensnared by the same rigorous scrutiny that had dismantled Sophia and Sterling's lives. Trinity Medical Group is pushing back against the new oversight requirements, Jake reported. Initiate a full investigation, Ethan ordered. Pull all financial records and licensing documents. Use the full protocol. His network had become a finely tuned machine, capable of exposing corruption at every level. Each member brought specialized expertise, refined through years of collaborative efforts. Our best forensic team is on it, Maria confirmed. If there's anything to uncover, we'll find it. Over time, the core team's personal bonds had only grown stronger. Jake's dry humor, Laura's analytical precision, Maria's financial expertise, and Sarah's healthcare knowledge complemented Ethan's strategic vision perfectly. Remember our first planning session? Jake mused during a rare reflective moment. We thought we were just going after 2 people. We were treating symptoms, Ethan replied. Now we're addressing the root cause. The Foundation's headquarters housed a secure archive, chronicling their evolution from personal revenge to institutional reform. Sophia and Sterling's case files were now part of a vast collection, each representing lives affected by healthcare fraud. Latest victim compensation numbers, Maria reported. We've recovered over $15 billion in fraudulent charges since we began. These figures represented more than financial restitution. They signified lives protected, families supported, and systems fundamentally changed. The Foundation had successfully transformed personal vengeance into widespread institutional justice. Looking ahead, Ethan saw endless opportunities for further growth. The tools he had once used to dismantle Sophia and Sterling's lives now served as instruments of industry-wide reform. International healthcare groups are requesting our oversight protocols, Sarah noted. They've seen the results here in North America. Send them the full package, Ethan directed. Same standards, no exceptions. His reputation had evolved from that of a man wronged to a respected reformer. But those closest to him knew the same relentless drive fueled both roles. The difference now lay in its purpose. Personal vengeance had been replaced by enduring systemic change. Laura observed that the Foundation's framework was now being scrutinized by top academic institutions. Their methodologies were finding their way into healthcare management courses. This scholarly interest validated their approach, but didn't limit their mission. For Ethan, success wasn't defined by accolades, but by preventing fraud and protecting patients. The Foundation's weekly gatherings wrapped up with tactical discussions, now focusing on identifying and resolving systemic vulnerabilities rather than singling out wrongdoers. 5 more hospital networks are requesting our compliance certification, Sarah reported. Comprehensive audits come first, Ethan replied. Trust isn't handed out, it's earned. This mantra mirrored changes in his personal philosophy as well. Once a man who leaned on familial bonds, Ethan had built systems anchored in verifiable accountability. Both his work and personal relationships operated under strict guidelines of demonstrated loyalty. You've built something remarkable, Jake commented during a rare, quiet evening at O'Malley's pub. Something that will outlast us. That was always the goal, Ethan responded. Personal revenge has an expiration date. Systemic transformation doesn't. The Foundation's training facility frequently hosted healthcare workers eager to adopt their practices. The narrative of Sophia and Sterling served as a vivid illustration of how personal wrongdoing could reveal deeper institutional cracks. Another ethics class is graduating next week, Sarah noted. They've all met our certification criteria. Excellent, Ethan nodded. Make sure they understand this isn't about punishing individuals. It's about preventing abuse. Over a decade, what began as a husband's quest for revenge had transformed into a catalyst for industry-wide reform. The sting of betrayal had given rise to something far stronger than mere retaliation. The condo on Riverside Drive, where it all started, had become a symbol of that evolution. Its rooms, once meant for family celebrations, now stood as a bulwark against similar betrayals for countless families. Ethan's office held no traces of his past, no photos, no keepsakes. Instead, the walls showcased maps of the Foundation's expanding influence, charts tracking fraud reduction, and plans for future projects. We're making a difference, Maria said while examining the latest impact data. We're creating change, Ethan corrected her. A difference can fade. Change is lasting. The man who once orchestrated the perfect revenge had constructed something far more enduring. He had founded a legacy of systemic reform that would endure long after personal grievances were forgotten. As he looked out over New York's medical district from his office window, Ethan pondered the journey from that pivotal housewarming party to this point. Sophia and Sterling thought they had dismantled his world. Instead, they had ignited a movement for institutional reform that would transform an entire industry. The Foundation's achievements showed that true revenge didn't end in personal downfall. It flourished through systemic overhaul, converting individual pain into collective security. Ethan picked up the latest report, his mind already on the next issue, the next reform, the next victory. Personal revenge had dealt with his past, but systemic reform would shape his future. The work carried on, consistently turning personal justice into institutional progress, one case at a time.